want to become somebody who runs their own business, then you must be willing to deal with failure. Do something out of the norm at least once a month. Best thing for an entrepreneur, being able to listen to what a client is saying and be able to realize what the client needs and sell it to them. Welcome to the Ethel Kofi Startup School. My name is Ethel Kofi. This week I wanted to talk about dealing with sales objections. So you've done all, your sales arsenal. So you've run an email campaign, you've gotten a meeting with your dream clients, and you get in front of that dream client, and you have your presentation, and you're dressed smart or you're dressed, and you talk your presentation, and then they go effectively deal with the sales objections. I'm going to start by talking about just a general framework, and then I'm going to pick specific sales objections. There are a few that we deal with, right? There are specific sales objections and how you could possibly deal with it. So stay tuned. It's half an hour of goodness, entrepreneurial goodness. We'll be talking about sales. Okay, so the first rule in dealing with sales objections is understand your customer or your potential customer's real concerns. Don't brush it aside. Try to understand what they're saying to you, right? So first of all, why are they objecting, and why are they bringing it up at this time? It could be that you're talking to somebody who doesn't have the authority to decide the sale, right? And so, or you're talking to somebody that might have a perception problem with your product. But you need to understand, sometimes you'll get, oh, we're not buying now, and maybe that's not actually what they mean, right? What actually they mean is maybe we don't have money, or maybe we're not buying from you, right? Which is also a very specific thing. But you have to ask open-ended questions that don't require a yes or no. So, tell me a little bit about your sales process. Tell me a little bit about this problem you're having. Allow the potential client to talk. The more they talk, the more they will give you information, the more you will understand. There was a client I was talking to, was it this year, somewhere halfway this year, early on this year. And we kept having the meetings, going back and forth, and they were still not making the commitment. So I wondered, I finally got the IT manager on the side and said, look, really tell me, you seem to have this problem. It seems that you want the sale. You want to make, you want to buy it, but what's going, what's the problem? Why, and then he, in the conversation, it came out that, look, there is someone who owns an IT company who's on the board of the company. So it wouldn't make sense to give the project to someone else. You see, I had to have conversations to understand this. So I was getting the, come back next week, or let's talk about it. And then, you have to drill down and try and understand why they are objecting, so that once you get that, it will give you a clear direction of the sale. So ask a lot of open-ended questions, right? So don't just take a no as a no. I think with sales, ask questions, ask open-ended questions, try and understand the real concern. It could be that, the person who you're talking to likes the product, wants to buy the product, but he knows he cannot convince, or she cannot convince his boss to buy, or her boss to buy. So they're telling you, oh no, we're not ready to buy. The more you ask questions, the more that these things will come up in the conversation. And then also, don't dismiss. So validate and acknowledge your prospect's concerns. Don't dismiss the sales objections of your potential clients. Sometimes you're in a meeting and they say, oh, but we like this, but, and you kind of dismiss what they are saying. Don't do that. Have empathy. Try to understand it from their perspective. Try and sit in the shoes of your customer, right? Try and be in the shoes of your customer, so that you have a little bit more empathy and understanding, and even just acknowledging the nature of their problem will make them like you better. Ask them why. Ask why questions. Ask a lot of why questions, because that will get you to the root of the objection. Okay. Also, never answer a question without understanding the context, right? So how much is it? Wait, talk about value. Give them any objection that they have. Try and get the context around it before you try and answer. Try and get, why are you asking this specific question? How is that specifically related to you? So that you can get you can get more context before you answer a question. And once you are sure you understand what the objection is, respond properly, correctly, clearly, and respond once. Don't be desperate, right? Like, answer it once. Try and deal with it effectively once, and close it off so that they understand, and we'll talk about the potential ones down the line. So understand the real concern. So we've talked about, I've given you a little framework. First of all, understand the concerns, have empathy for the client. Never answer a question without understanding context, and then respond only when you are sure you have context. Don't try and speak over them, right? Don't try and speak over them quickly. Like somebody's saying something, you're waiting for your turn, but answering the question quickly. No. Be clear on what the objection is and the context of the objection, then you answer them. All right, so I'll talk about specific objections. There are quite a few. I have about 50, but we won't get through 50. So maybe we might get to about 10, 15, 20. And we'll take it from there. Right? So there are lots of objections. So I've categorized them a little bit. So objections around price and budget. That's a big sort of overview, right? I get this quite a lot. It's too expensive. That's one big, every salesperson, every entrepreneur gets this. Your product is too expensive. Here's the thing to do when you are sitting in a sales meeting and somebody says you're too expensive. Don't start to have the argument on price or try to solve the objection on price. Try to solve it on value. So for instance, if I'm sitting in a sales meeting selling IT consulting, maybe a digital sales strategy to maybe a bank, and then they say, oh, but maybe I say my daily rate is $1,000. No, you're too expensive. My response would be, when I put together your digital, your e-strategy or digital strategy, it will save you wasting $10,000 over the year on projects that don't work. I'm bringing you value and to ensure that all the projects you do build will effectively increase your sales by X percentage, right? So I'm not dwelling on price. So I'm talking about the value that I bring. So every time somebody's talking about price, don't start arguing on price, because there's always somebody who's cheaper than you. There's always somebody who's cheaper than you. Whichever business you do, there's always, in fact, if you're selling it for $1, somebody's giving it away for free. Please, don't argue on price. Argue on, deal with the sales objection on value, okay? So start talking about value. So when you get that in a sales meeting, quantify the value that you bring so that the person can understand, why I'm paying this amount, but I'm getting more. Okay, there's one where or the sales objection will say there's no money. Well, it could be a valid point that we don't have the budget or there's no money for it. It could be a valid point, or it could be that they're trying to give you a runaround, right? So they're trying to just get you to go away. And so the simplest thing is to say, nah, there's no money, right? Now, what you could do is ask a few more questions, and if you do find out they really don't have the budget, fine, you know, go back, but keep in contact and track the growth of the company, right? Because that's still a potential sale. So track the growth of the company, maybe, you know, track them and see where over time they will get to where you think that they might be able to afford your products. So don't just, when they say no, don't just go away. Keep track of the growth of the company. Then there's a third one, which is we don't have any budget left this year, which is if you do B2B like me, you usually get maybe the COO or the IT manager or the CEO saying, look, my budget for IT spend is finished, right? Maybe it usually happens at this time of the year. So we're in October, November, it's winding up to the end of the year. I've spent all my budget, my allocated budget as a company. Find out if the problem you're solving for them is indeed a pressing problem, and try and see if you can secure the budget for next year, right? So not just, oh, I'll come back next year. Because if you come back next year, maybe somebody else has already secured, you know, that thing that you want to sell. So maybe have a conversation and say, look, if you can commit to, if you really want this project, if you can commit in writing this year for us to maybe start billing you next year, maybe we can throw in some discounts, or we can even start the project ahead. Do you get it? So that way you lock in a potential project rather than, okay, we understand your budget is finished, let's come back next year and talk to you. That happens a lot to sponsorship people too. So if you are looking for sponsorship, oh, our sponsorship, we've exhausted our sponsorship. Okay, good. So we'll be doing this event again next year. And so are you willing to commit to being a next year sponsor, right? So secure something before you walk out. And then there's a variation of that. There's no money, like we said, we don't have money, or there's no money at the moment. It's a variation of the budget thing. Or I don't want to get stuck. So we've been talking about dealing with sales and sales objections. We've done the first 15 minutes. We're doing the last 15 minutes. We went through the framework of how to deal with it. So make sure that you're asking open-ended questions. Make sure you understand the reason why the potential customer is objecting. Make sure you ask a lot of open-ended questions. Make sure that you know what's going on with them, right? You have empathy, you understand from their point of view. Like I said, never answer a question without fully getting the context. So ask more questions than you actually answer. And don't be dismissive of the objections that they have. So we talked about, so in the first part, we talked about objections based on price or budget. And then we're now talking about objections based on your competitors. And so one of the objections will be, I can get a cheaper version of your product from somewhere else, from this other competitor, this other competitor. Now, this objection is a variation, right? This sales objection is a variation of the, what do you call it? Of the, we don't have a budget, or your competitor is better objection. Look, don't fight your fight about budgets. Don't go into the gutter about price. Talk about value. Always, every time somebody starts talking about budget, go to value, right? Explain to them that what they are getting is even more than what you are being given, right? So if they say, oh, but we can get, I don't know, like I said earlier, there's a cleaning agency that was cheaper, but they just used to really they just didn't clean thoroughly. We now got another cleaning agency that I pay more for, but they use a better quality products, they clean thoroughly, they give us extra days of cleaning. So don't sell on price, don't start to haggle on price, start to haggle on the value that you bring, right? Be very clear, be very clear what the value that the potential customer needs, and argue that out instead of fighting the fight for, on price, because there's always going to be somebody cheaper than you. Dear entrepreneurs, honestly, here's a PSA moment. There will always be somebody who's selling a cheaper product. Don't get into the what do you call it, the price fights, because somebody will beat you on experience. If you sell it at $1, somebody will sell it at 0. Sell on value. Sell on value. That's my real belief. Sell on value. Or you're sitting in that sales meeting, or you've called the client and they say, I am happy with your competitor. I'm already with your competitor and I'm happy with them. Okay. Ask a bit more open-ended questions. So again, you're trying to be sneaky to find out if there's something, there might be one little thing that they might not necessarily like about this competitor they're working with. Or, they're locked into a 5-year contract, so you can't say anything. At least try and find that out and understand if you can structure your sale or your deal so that they can easily get out of the contract. If they might be truly happy, that's fine. At least you know that they're truly happy with your competitor. At least you know that you can walk away. But you have to ask a bit more questions, be a bit more stealth about it. Try and understand, why are they happy? Actually ask why are they happy, because maybe you can use that for your next client so that the client stays with you. Or there's one that has happened to me a couple of times. You go to a meeting and your competitor says something false about you. So your competitor says your products don't work, or your competitor says you manufacture let's say you're in manufacturing. Your competitor says no, you manufacture your products in unhygienic conditions. Maybe it's a food product. Honestly, in those situations, look the potential customer in the eye and say, that's not true. Don't badmouth the competitor. Just say that's not true. And take your time and explain your value and move on. Because what that does is it makes your competitor look desperate. And that makes you look like somebody who's more confident. If you don't, then backbite your customers. Because some people get really upset and say, oh, but they are also bad, they are horrible. Don't do that. Just be clear and say, look, this is not true. This is the value we bring. You look more confident, your competitor looks more desperate. And then there are sales objections. Let's talk about sales objections around authority or the ability to buy. So let's talk about that one, right? So you spend 4 or 5 hours in a presentation talking to one person, or you spent a month, email back and forth trying to sell to this person. And then when it comes down to it, they say, well, actually, I'm not the person's I'm not authorized to sign off this purchase. Now, this is something you should try and find out very, very early in the process. So when you're talking to the clients first, really ask about who makes the buying decision, who signs off on the buying decision, who actually signs off the purchase order, who actually buys. Look, if you're selling a mass market product, it could be that you could be talking to, I don't know, the one person in the home, and then it might be this other person in the home who actually makes the buying decision, right? So be very clear in the beginning. Find out who is the one who actually makes the final buying decision, so that you don't waste a lot of energy on the person who's really not the authorized person. If you've gotten to that point anyway, just ask who it is, and just take your, just go off to that person and try to solve them. So be open, but at the beginning of the sale, please ask, especially when you're selling to businesses. Sometimes it's 4 or 5 people that make the buying decision. Please ask. Or that, oh, I can't sell this to my boss, or I can't convince my boss to buy it. That's a really good thing, because then you can support this person, give them sales material, actually coach them, so they can go and get get their boss's approval, right? So I have a sale I'm in the middle of right now, and talking to I think a GM for something, a GM for marketing, and then she said invariably, look, I'm not the final authority on this. I cannot make the sale. But I was directed to who could agree on the sale and said, look, this is the person you talk to. This is the person that says, yes, we buy. This is the person that says, no, we don't buy. So, and so I provided her with everything that she needs in order to go and convince. Sometimes you have to write a couple of white papers, how to convince your boss to buy, I don't know, a customer relationship management system, how to convince your boss to buy IT digital strategy. Write it, give it to them, let them use it, right? So if you do B2B, you have the buyer, the person who's going to use it, and you have the economic buyer, right? So the person who actually has the budget. If he's not convinced, you have to spend a lot of work actually sitting, so maybe the selling to them.